Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to the legislative coffee for February. Really appreciate seeing you all here. It's a very busy time here in the across the state, actually, for the GOP, as the county convention is being held on the same day. So we really thank Jason for coming to be able to update us on what's been happening in the legislature since our last coffee, and then to answer questions. And I know a lot of folks have some regarding the AEA program, the library programs, and a few other things that are going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason, let him give you the update, then we'll open up the floor. Today I do not have microphones because the county convention borrowed them from me so they could use them. So we'll just, if you do have a question, please stand up and speak so everybody can hear you. And then at the end of the session, Mike Colby is here. Mike is running for supervisor here in Shelby County, so he does have his candidate sheet if anybody would like to give him signatures for that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason.
Well, folks, thank you for being here. It is county convention day, so normally, and I'll include this in kind of my introduction, so normally I would be running to the most possible combination of Ida County, Crawford, Shelby, Carroll, or Audubon. The district also includes 2 townships in Potawatomi, right there by Avoca. That one, I couldn't get to Council Bluffs, but those are the counties that I represent that are in the district with you. So there was a little bit of miscommunication, but I wanted to make sure I was here. Steve Holt would like to be here. He's a delegate at the Crawford County Convention, so he was committed to be there all day. Brian Best misunderstood, didn't know there was going to be a forum. Him and his wife are out of state. I'm guessing visiting family, but I don't know that. I texted him this morning. Once I found out that we had this publicized, I believe my job is to come look you in the eye more than run to conventions. So I've sent a message to all the different counties and just asked them to read it. The conventions are more than seeing candidates anyway. They're doing actual party work, and so we'll let that go. The issues that I guess I'm kind of predicting we'll hear about today, and then you can add to that, but I'll make notes on what folks think. AEAs, the Area Education Associations, or agencies, that was a product of the governor doing her deep dive. You've heard in the newsletters, and just emails that we didn't know. We heard that there was something coming with AEAs. We didn't know what it was going to be. So when we saw the very first bill, it fell flat on its face. It was a bit more drastic than we could imagine going. There was an effort for an amendment. Then what can we do? The governor worked with the legislature, the education committees, and they drew out an outline. And when that kind of got spread around the caucuses, House and Senate, we said, well, that's too close to the first one. We're still not interested. I don't know if you want to count we're on the 3rd iteration or 4th, but I actually thought, and I returned some emails, that the AEA issue was dead because the House wasn't going to do anything. My colleague in the Senate, Lynn Evans, a retired superintendent from Aurelia, he wanted to flesh out the idea and just see where there was potential for efficiencies or some ideas. So I thought, well, that's it. The House won't take anything this year anyway. Many of them have told me that. And then all of a sudden the House started moving a product. So I think it's a very bare bones issue, but I'm interested to hear about that. And I don't know yet that idea can come out of the legislature. Right of first refusal, I'll give you just a quick update on it. I'm not sure if anyone was going to bring that up. That's an issue we took up in 2018. We passed in 2020 or 21. It actually went to court, and the Supreme Court said, we're sending it back to district. We don't like the way it was passed. What it does is at the federal level of government, the Federal Energy Regulation Commission decides, they oversee the whole national grid. They send out to the regional transmission organizations. Ours is MISO, M-I-S-O, I forget what it stands for. Always referred to as MISO. And then close by we have the Southwest Power Pool. They tell, hey, you need this much transmission. start lining this up, to get from here to here. And then from there, it actually goes to the Iowa Utilities Board again, which then deals with where does that transmission line go. Right of first refusal is a state policy, is actually in law now. It used to be the universal policy across the country that the incumbent electrical provider, Mid-American or ITC, is over in the eastern Iowa, that they would have the first shot to build a transmission for the purpose that once it's built, they would be the ones maintaining it, they would be the ones operating it. So it used to always be that, it used to always be at the federal level, if you received the electricity down that transmission line, you were the first to get the chance to build it. So it was your parts, your suppliers, your everything, so that we have, and it all comes down to reliable electricity. The other side of the issue is that when you put it up for bid nationwide, you have lower bids come in, but you get less of a transmission line. And you've got out-of-state companies coming to work with our landowners. The example I was given is that when out-of-state companies come in, they build it to the minimum standard, so they do meet a standard, but it's the difference between having the large wooden poles, 2 poles with a huge reinforcing network up top, or Mid-American, actually for landowner relations, puts in 1 large steel pole, so you have a smaller impact on the landowner. The other part that actually comes up with pipeline is Mid-American and ITC are Iowa companies. They have a 99% voluntary easement rates. They are willing to do about anything to make sure that their name doesn't get run through the mud by landowners. We aren't going to see that from out-of-state companies. So the history on it is, and this is not partisan, this is just history, because the Obama administration in 2011 is who changed by administrative rule the right of first refusal. I actually don't mind that they did that. I understand that competition can make people better and lower costs, but there were some ramifications. That happened in 2011. In 2018, our incumbent ITC actually tried to go out to other states and just bid on projects because those were the new rules. 3 years later, they said we're out of the market. Our product cannot compete because it was a race to the bottom, they said. Other states were getting the absolute least transmission lines in terms of gauge of wire, strength of poles, landowner relations. ITC didn't want to be known for that, so they actually got out of the game. And we've been working to make sure that we have good players in Iowa ever since. Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It's a bill that another senator has been trying to run for 5-6 years. I told him that I would try to take it over. The language he was using really wasn't agreed to. All this is, and I have a newsletter out in the newspapers about this now. All it is a cause of action so that if somebody believes their religious freedoms have been infringed, they have the ability to go to district court, or right now they don't have that direct route. The court has to find a compelling interest for the state, not private employers, but the state, to infringe. And I have an example there in the newsletter. And then if they do find a compelling case that they do, yes, we do have a compelling interest in forcing you to do this, it has to be the least restrictive remedy possible. And the quick, simple, non-controversial example I have, Pennsylvania has the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. They also have Amish, who are in horses and buggies going 2 miles an hour down pavements. Cars were running into them, and the Pennsylvania DOT said, hey, you have to put this blaze orange triangle that we're familiar with on the back of your buggy, and you have to put flashers on your buggies. Well, the Amish obviously don't want electricity, and they actually have in their religious documents, flashy colors are forbidden. So here's how the system worked. They went to district court. District court said, we do have a compelling interest that people are not running into the back of buggies on our highway. We do have a right to say here. However, we have to find the least restrictive method, so what they did was they came to an agreement that reflective duct tape would be outlined on the back of the buggy that was not orange, but it would be white, silver, something like that, something like we have on our grain trailers. And then also you have to hang lanterns on the back of your buggy outside, to the outside of your tires, your wheels. That's how it works. Yes, we have a compelling interest, but we have to do it the least offensive way, so that works. Taxes, we are dealing with. The governor came out, talked about taxes earlier before session started. That plan's off to the side. Both the House and the Senate have said, no, we'll take care of taxes, thank you, we know you're interested, so we will get you a plan ourselves. And the House and Senate are working side by side on that, checking each other's math. Everything we do, make sure we have a 6 or 8 year outlook. As compared to the revenue estimating conference that looks 3 years out, we're going 6. And actually trying to go 8, but we realize the confidence gets pretty weak out there that far. And then in state government, I am running an election bill that is seeking to, the number one issue for me would be to have our voter registration list, I call it scrubbed, but checked by a real-time identification verification company. This would be the same technology that I promoted in the welfare reform bill that I worked on for 6 years. We finally got that through. And the success I'd like to report on that, Director Garcia of the Health and Human Services in Iowa, she was against the technology. She said, let me work on it. Well, it turned out, when we finally got that welfare reform bill through, Iowa's food stamp, or SNAP, program had a 12.5% error rate. They were giving 12.5% away to the wrong people. After using real-time verification, and she says she can't lay it all at that new tool, but it was a tool along with working with her team. Iowa now this year has a 0.96 efficiency or error rate. That is half the national average. And I couldn't be happier for them and for us. If you imagine the SNAP food program it was, last time I checked a couple years ago, a $600 million program just in Iowa. 12.5% of that was going to the wrong people. And then we're wondering why some people don't want to go to work. Well, they had access to tax dollars that they shouldn't have. So I think we've got that one fixed. I'd like to take that technology and make sure that the people registered to vote in Iowa that meet our current standards. You have to be alive. People pass away. Auditors have a hard time keeping up with who passes away in other states, other counties. So I don't blame them, but we have technology that can make that really easy. Do you live where you say you live? Do you have multiple addresses? Are you registered multiple times? The same name with different addresses. And I'm actually most interested in the Mississippi Riverside. We have Illinois right over there, and it's a Democrat machine state, and I don't have any faith in Illinois elections, but I also kind of wonder, and I've heard first-hand accounts, but they are just eyewitness accounts. There's no documentation, there's nothing. That I talked to a poll worker in eastern Iowa who said that they had people come register to vote the day on election day, but multiple people had similar or identical photocopied lease agreements for their address requirement. We're going to look into that. My goal is to get our voter registration list looked at once every 2 years. Strategy can be discussed. I mean, this isn't locked in, but I'd like to do it the middle of January, which would be 2 months after Election Day. And I would like a report on the whole voter registration list, broke down by counties, given to the county auditor. Here's your information, and then follow the procedures that they have in place now. So we're not making any more aggressive removal. We just want the auditors to have the information. And then I'd also like a sub-report that breaks down only those registering to vote on Election Day. Let's just take a look and see who they are, and if there are any discrepancies when you run their names, addresses, and all through the data. So with that, I did see I missed. I chair state government, as I mentioned. I'm on judiciary. workforce, commerce, and ways and means. So those would be the kind of the issues I'm most familiar with. And with that, I will stop and open up to questions. Which issues you want to talk about?
Can you talk about the pipeline, where that is in the legislature?
Pipeline, the House looks like Holt's got a bill again. We just came through the funnel, which is the self-imposed deadline that Senate bills have to get out of the Senate committee, House bills out of the House committee. I believe their bill is alive, made it through, right? I'm checking, I want to make sure, I don't keep up on all the House bills. They now have to run it off the floor, send it over to the Senate, and we have 1 month before our next deadline where House bills have to be out of committee. It's going to be difficult. And it's for the exact same reasons that I talked about last month. Our caucus is all over on this issue. So that's the update I've got, is if it's alive, they can run it off the floor this week and send it over to us.
Hi, I have a question with the voter ID, and I'm hearing about RNC. They're talking about maybe possibility changing what they're doing, and they're talking about like a lot of times that you like to legal harvesting. So what you thought about legal harvesting? You understand what I mean?
Well, ma'am.
That people could, because Democrats already doing legal harvesting for voter ballots.
Okay.
And then they're talking about maybe follow that scheme, but I don't know about Iowa. Is it legal or what?
And ballot harvesting?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. I'm as hard of hearing, and actually, I between the whistling in my ears and then just, I'm afraid I have lost over the years with tractors and
Need a
guns.
hearing aid.
I'm afraid so. So ballot harvesting is something that happened in other states. We don't know of any that happened specifically in Iowa, but we did because of the COVID overreaction. All of a sudden, we had drop boxes for ballots all over the place. The last state government chair pulled them in to where we just had one drop box in front of the courthouses. The bill I'm running now actually gets rid of those as well. We have a postal service. We have you can come in person to the auditor's office and vote early in person with your ID, and you can vote on election day. So getting rid of drop boxes will help the ballot harvesting issue. But also, the problem with the ballot harvesting, you had strangers going out, having people fill out absentee ballot requests, maybe helping them fill out the ballot, maybe not, but making sure that they went and picked them up in stacks, and then they would come drop them off in either the drop boxes or the auditor's office. It has been illegal for over 2 years for a stranger to do all that. You have to be a family member in order to handle somebody's absentee ballot, and I don't like it. We can address it. You can only do so much each year in an election year before it gets too heavy and too complicated. But we still have things that I don't like, which is both parties just flooding out absentee ballot requests to people. And the reason is people think those are actual ballots. That lowers the confidence in the system. My only goal in state government is to increase confidence in the system, and having the state Republican Party and the state Democrat Party flood out absentee ballots confuses people and makes them wonder if their vote counts. And I don't want to have that in Iowa, so we're going to keep working on it. We believe ballot harvesting has been addressed, and we are currently watching for future problems, and if there are some, we will take action, but we think we've dealt with it.
But you just said that there was no issue in Iowa.
Uh-huh.
So why is this an issue? I mean, I don't understand. Why are we worried about something that has not
Voter
been a problem?
confidence. It is all, really is voter confidence. Everything, when people say other states have this problem, I don't want it to happen here. Some people think it happens here, but I can't find any evidence. But in cases where we can increase voter confidence without infringing on the individual's right to vote, we have been taking action. And that would be like the case with drop boxes. Turns out also those drop boxes, even the ones sitting in front of the courthouse, are expensive and labor intensive. The current law says that the auditor's office has to have a certified individual go check the drop box for ballots every day. Even like right before primaries, you have Memorial Day right before that. So you end up paying people to, on a federal holiday, you pay them double to go in, check the box. We also have video equipment. They have to be video secure as well. And they're expensive, technologically and personnel intense. So things like that. We're just trying to make sure people know that there's no loopholes. I don't know if you have a backup or not. I don't want to run away from that.
No, I,
Okay. Ma'am? No, wait, all the way in the back, I think I said.
No,
Oh,
she
okay.
go first.
Ma'am?
And just a quick question, and I won't be able to speak to this well because somebody sent me the wrong Senate file, but that there's something before the Senate that says our voting machines are allowed instead of required.
Their current law says that the tabulators will be used unless the jurisdiction has a population under 3,500 or something like that. You have the city. I believe the confusion happened, both the House and myself. So Bobby Kaufman in state government in the House and myself agreed we were not going to do away with that exception and allow people to hand count if they wanted to. This came off of a Secretary of State model language bill. We changed that language in the Senate so that you could still hand count. The House decided to just file the model language and amend it in the process. So people saw the House drop that bill, but we were never going to do away with hand counting. And it won't be in there in the end, so.
I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Okay, I don't know what else to offer.
Okay. I'll try to check into it.
We are gonna let people hand count in smaller jurisdictions after this election bill. I don't know how to add to that.
Okay, but where they have, okay. This has more to do with the voting machines themselves. I think.
Okay, I don't know of any additional issue that would reinforce voting machines. Now, I have, in my deep dive before session, getting ready for session, I was of the understanding that our tabulating machines were, that following it at the general election, I thought the Secretary of State randomly chose 2 counties, and in those counties randomly chose 2 precincts. And then they would audit the tabulator versus the paper ballots. Because it's important that we remember there's paper ballots after election day. There is something that we can audit and check. What I found out is actually the Secretary of State's office goes to all 99 counties and selects 2 precincts, and then they audit the top of the ballot race, which is either, a U.S. senator, president every 4 years, U.S. senator or governor in the, the off elections. But they 99 counties, 2 precincts, 2 races, and they compare the tabulator to the paper ballots. They tell me that they have a 100% match. Now, I have asked, how do I know you're doing it? I mean, how do I know that you're actually going out and doing this? The Secretary of State's staff was a little bit frustrated because they're like, we don't know what to do other than ask you to come along. I mean, we're doing it. We file a report. We're there. We have eyewitnesses. The auditors know we're there.
They put the little sticker on, just like they do on gas pumps.
Oh, I kind of like that. Just stick that right on the auditor's door. The Secretary of State's office was here on this date after the general. If you have an idea how I could, because like I said, I asked them, well, how do we know you're doing it? I mean, that's a lot of auditing, really an impressive amount of auditing. And they're like, we don't know what to tell you. We go in person, the auditor sees we're there, we're watched while we audit, and they don't know what else to do either, like we're there. So if anybody has any ideas, I could offer to stick that in the bill for
maybe
them.
trust people?
What?
Maybe trust people?
Well, there is a little bit of that. At some point, when a constitutional officer tells you, they are elected by the people, they tell you, we are doing it. And I asked the follow-up, really so I could face you and say that I even asked. And they're like, we don't know what else to tell you. We're there in person and the auditors are there with us. The
I
county.
am imagine that, I'm an auditor,
Huh?
not for that kind of thing, but, I mean, people would sign off, I'll be honest, you know. I'm not gonna say I audited something without some sort of signature.
Sure.
So I would think there was proper documentation.
What's your experience with the election audit with the Secretary of State?
That's what I mean, I would assume though any type of audit, because they would be following normal procedures, would be to verify or and sign off.
That's it. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
so,
I do have a question about, early, we call it, early absent voting, and the timeline you change the, instead of like 1 month ahead, you
Yes.
change it. But who are allowed to do after ballot? Can you define that?
the window for absentee balloting,
And who allowed to qualify for that? Like me, I'm in town. Do I'm allowed to go there? Only for people out of country.
No, everybody can do absentee voting.
it's pretty wide open.
Yeah.
We always vote absentee.
Yeah.
Just because we have to drive half an hour to Shelby.
Yep.
Like,
So
round trip,
everybody,
yeah.
everybody's allowed.
So absentee ballot accessibility is universal. There's no requirement in code to show that you're going to be out of the area, or you can just request one. So we just want to make sure that it's actually the person requesting is the same person who returns the ballot.
That's the point.
So the absentee ballot window then, and this was, I really honestly do hope you like this, because this was a concession to the auditors that I was happy to go along with. The House, so we used to have, was it 10 days and end of business election day. But auditors asked us if they could go start 2 days early mailing out the absentee, so that the ballot at least had a chance to get to the requester before some of them would come in and try to vote early. Because now you got the absentee ballot in transit, and then this person comes in and votes, and now they got a live ballot. So we tried. So what the bill will do, and we've agreed to it all in the House, with the House, we're going to move the window 2 days ahead so that you can get the ballot in the mail. And then we're moving the, when you can receive the absentee ballot 1 day forward. We want, and here's the reasoning for it, we want absentee ballots to be in-house and secured before election day. And ma'am?
How are you handling it with the change in the postal service now when all your mail is really late?
There's not a whole lot we can do about
But
that.
I mean.
Why is it important to have it in there 2 days ahead?
Sure.
Why is it important for it to be there 2 days ahead? If it's there the day that you're counting the votes, isn't that all you need?
Oh, it's not 2 days ahead. It's the day before election day.
Okay, why a day ahead of election day?
Because we want to have all the absentee ballots secured and locked in a room before live voting. Because the next day is live voting.
So people need to mail them in 2 weeks in advance.
As soon as you get it, a week.
Yeah,
A
but I
week.
don't know if everybody is aware of that, just
Sure. No, you want to.
the way the system's set up.
Or hand deliver it. Yep. Hand deliver it, you can bring it in person and hand it over. But all of this is geared toward, we want, because we have Facebook too. The things we see on Facebook tell us that people are worried about whether their vote counts or not. We're trying to do everything we can to make sure that people have confidence in the system.
You can track that on Secretary of State, if your ballot has been received and
It is.
entered, so.
Yep. Okay, so Steve's been raising his hand.
Steve Kangle, Shelby County Supervisor. I got a couple questions.
Mhm.
First one's related to our budget. Our jail, the last 2 years, our residency occupation's gone up 49%. Last year, the jail was out of budget. Of course, we can't kick them on the street, It's an essential service. And we got on the jail director fairly hard that you gotta stay in budget. He's did some things. This year he's out of budget again. So to make him whole, we're working on next year's budget.
Sure.
He's seen his increase go up over 30%, okay? So his increase alone to make him whole, that we have to do, is gonna take up over 1.5% of our budget. And with the state budget restrictions and stuff with growth, that and our liability, casualty, property insurance went up 39%, like most people in the room. Those two things are 2.5% of our budget.
Sure.
Is there any bills or thoughts with you guys addressing, like with the jail, the taxpayers are stuck with paying for the health insurance they have there, their dental, their prescriptions, addressing Medicare. I mean, you guys got one of the largest slush funds in the nation. You can really help the taxpayers here with some of the mandates and stuff you have, but you're not funding them.
And I guess I'll start with, I believe it's March 18th. Are you going down for ISAC's
Yep.
supervisor deal?
Yep.
That day, Dan Dawson is going to stand in front of all the supervisors. And I'm actually going to go down and watch. My understanding, and
Bulletproof vest or what?
I just stand there and I'm going to just stand there and say, I want to see. The reason is, I believe the Association of Counties has not sufficiently explained the bill to the supervisors and to the auditors, who are kind of the financial person in the courthouse. Whenever I would go back and talk to folks about the property tax bill, I am told, I've said, that can't be a problem. Health insurance levies for health insurance, pensions, secondary road aren't capped, aren't part of the rate of growth.
No, but you're still got to tax the taxpayers for it.
You do, but the complaint we're hearing is that we're not allowed to grow fast enough in order to cover these additional costs. But so many of the largest increases aren't capped and aren't part of the formula.
And that's not my question. My question is, we have something growing that fast.
Yeah.
What can the state do to help the property tax owners so it doesn't all fall on them?
I don't know, but the idea of having general fund money go out to the county jail system is probably going to be a tough sell. I mean, it certainly
No, but we
is.
have to have
It's
it.
going to be hard. Yeah, you got to have it. It's going to be a tough budgeting deal.
No, it is.
There's no doubt about it, and we knew that. But it comes from a legislature that de-appropriated, when we got the majority, we de-appropriated $500 million out because it just wasn't sustainable. And every year we leave a lot of money on the table. We just don't allow government to grow.
So you're saying the supplemental, which that's one of the ones the jail falls under, that can go up as much as it wants. So we're just supposed to keep taxing
That's a
people
qualifier I can't quite go to. As much as it wants is a
I don't think
difference.
that's true.
But every time I would go back and talk about the complaints about the property tax, they mention those and say that they're not part of the formula
Yeah.
that restricts growth.
Well, I'm just giving you an exact thing that's happening.
Sure.
Okay, then the second question is, last year, the Des Moines Register poll said 78% of Iowans do not want eminent domain to be used for pipeline. It's a hot issue, you know, it's one of the main issues. What is the Senate doing to address that? Because the House, Steve Holtz has been a champion, working really hard to address that. 2 years ago, he told me personally, Steve, I don't think we have the votes, but we're gonna put it up for a vote. Well, it passed by 73%. Now the Senate sits on it. So what are you doing to help move that along? You have a bill in there now, I think, Senate filed 2097 or 92 that Sally Simon put up to address this. Are you guys gonna get it up for a vote and let's see where people are at?
There isn't the support for it.
But you don't know that until you put up for a vote. That's a democratic way.
I don't have the ability to do that.
You're on Commerce, that's where it's at.
I'm on Commerce.
Yeah.
I can't force it to come up.
No,
with
you can't
it.
force me, you can be an advocate.
And I have been.
Well, just, I don't care if it fails, I do care, but I don't. Please put it up and be like Steve is doing and trying to get it up. It's a priority here in the state when you have something like that.
I agree
If
completely.
there'd be a poll like that for something else, you guys would be jumping on it.
There are some other items that have high polling that we just are all over on, but
That has a higher polling than what you've been talking about
I
with
agree.
Yeah,
balloting.
so take a stand for us.
I have been.
Then
Put it
we'll
out
put it
for
up,
vote.
put it up for the vote, put it up for the vote.
I
A little
don't
louder.
have the ability to, I don't have the ability to do that. To-
Yeah, you
to
do.
put it- I mean, I've
You
talked to
can advocate like
Waylon.
Steve has.
Waylon knows where I am. Jack knows where I am. The other committee chairs know where I am. I'm,
But Jason, it's in the public, it's in the plank of the Republican Party
Yes.
to support eminent domain. We're gonna find out if you guys were there or not. You guys are in control. You're the Republicans control the Senate.
I wish I had a chance to vote on it.
And
so
it's
you-
allowing those three
Yeah,
people
vote on it.
to have a voice for all of the rest of Iowans, and that's not fair.
It's
Is there a
frustrating.
time limit on this meeting? Because I think there's a lot of issues that,
Yep.
you know.
But
Okay, I'm sorry, folks. I wish I could snap my fingers. and-
I'm just asking when we're gonna be over with this, so.
We do our best.
Okay, because
Keep
we
it to an
want
hour.
to, we want to keep it going. I just wanted to ask about the whole library and the city council issues that came up. My name's Leslie and I'm from Harlan. And how that came about, and it seems like a minority, you know, when the people went to Des Moines, it said a minority, they never even mentioned the city council people that were pushing for this because they heard things about the libraries or whatever. Again, is it a minority speaking for the whole, and how did this come about and why?
I don't know why he did it, and actually I was going to go out to dinner with him and talk to him about it Wednesday night.
Who's he?
Jesse Green from
Okay.
Boone, Jefferson,
Okay.
he represents that area.
Okay,
Jesse Green is the local government chair, and the bills are dead.
The one
No,
in the
they're not.
Senate,
no, they're not dead.
the original one in the Senate by Green is dead. But
Yeah.
then the House came back with another one. And then the Senate came back with another one. And the Senate, the current one that's on the Senate is to allow the city councils to hire library directors and also to further manage library monies and take that control away from the public libraries.
And it also strips the current process for removing certain reading materials from the library. Right now, it has to go to a popular vote, and it strips that out as well, which is censorship.
Takes away the popular vote. It takes away the popular vote, so.
What I knew about the library issues is Jesse tried to get it through the local government that he chaired. It blew up. The members said, absolutely not, we're not doing this. I was told then that the issue's dead.
Well, you were
So
not
this
wrong.
one's new, yeah, apparently.
Well, the House opened one, and there's still a discussion. But then the Senate, they introduced another one, and that's the one with the library director. But again, it's taking away the democratic process, because right now, if they want to change libraries, everybody in this room has to vote on it. If they want to change the structure of the governance versus giving it to city councils, and which is an elected, obviously, position. I think what's out there is I think they're trying to address the exceptions instead of, there's over 500 libraries in the state of Iowa. So if there's boards out there and city councils that are having concerns, it's not a majority of them, it's a handful of them. But that's what they're using to try to dismantle these volunteer library boards and then just push extra responsibilities onto city councils. And quite honestly, our city council, they do a great job at advocating for the library, but I can't imagine placing all the additional responsibilities on that city council, all the extra training and the orientation and the policy setting. So it's still a big concern out there, and with the funnel, I don't know exactly. Everything has happened so fast over the last 2 weeks with these bills.
I have heard League of Cities conveyed that from city councils, that we don't want it, we didn't ask for this, and we didn't. I really thought it was dead. So I'll go look. I didn't know about that. So, like I said, I was at the Capitol till midnight, and we had committees just ran forever. I was supposed to go out to dinner with Jesse that night. He asked if we could go, and he just kind of wanted to vent. He was going to tell me his side of the story, and we missed it. He was on education, and I was on workforce. And took all night.
Okay, so can we discuss about the AEA? Because I read in your article, the first bill, you were for it. You were, yeah, this is how much it's being wasted. These people are getting $300,000 for their supervisional. You talked about trying to bring the children up, which I never understood this, how you could bring a child up for a disability to traditional test scores, and you were talking about that in your column. And
Yes, I
so
did.
therefore, now you're saying it's not an issue. Well, it still is an issue because it just came about that they said they revised it, and that and so is that gone, the revision again? I mean, the revision was, it was gonna be the kind of the same bill, only it was gonna be extended out, and it wouldn't be effective until 25-26. And so the issue is, why are they trying to decrease the AEAs? What's going on? There are not enough special ed people in the school systems to take away the AEAs and put it on the schools. There's not enough money, there's not enough resources, there are not enough special ed people. And so those are very, very crucial issues for people who have been served by AEA and are still being served.
The newsletter was written from the perspective, why is there a bill at all? I mean, that.
Exactly, and you agreed with, everything that Governor Reynolds said.
I presented it that this is why we have a bill. These are the conditions that we have. The first bill was already dead by the time that one got out, and it wasn't, but it was written from the perspective, why is there one? Well, we have an achievement gap, we're spending more. That was the perspective on the thing, is why? I mean, why are we even having a discussion on AEAs? Well, there's improvement that could be done. The first bill was not the vehicle for that, it was too drastic. Nobody in the legislature wanted services cut. So the first bill wanted to go only to special ed and do away with general education services. None of us wanted that. So I guess that's the perspective on that. The second, I forget the details, I'm not on education, so what happens behind the scenes gets to me secondhand. The second version was too close to the first, so it was essentially dead before we even heard about it across the chamber. And like I said, I'm not sure if we're on the third or fourth, and I don't know if there's support for that too. What they're down to at the moment, my understanding, is an extended timeline, and the main function of the bill is to allow schools to, instead of, right now they take the state tax dollars and it's all flow through. It goes, here's how many students you have, take this money based on the number of students you have in special ed and give it to the AEA that you're in the district, that you have in the district. It would allow schools to stop, hold the money and use it at their discretion. Most of them, especially in rural Iowa, would just pass that on to the AEAs, but some schools would choose to either have an employee or to hire private services.
But my issue is when you were talking about the differences, you just said that about bringing up the people traditionally. I'm asking, what are you talking about? Are you talking about traditional students bringing up the kids with disability to the traditional students testing? That isn't possible. So when you say they're falling behind and they're not up to their scores, are you talking traditional? Who are you comparing those kids to?
And from the newsletter, and
yes.
I remember, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, is the nationwide test. I've heard the problems of the test. I've talked to the folks in the AEAs and the teachers, and yet that's the only nationwide example that you have to use. So the federal government uses NAEP. The numbers I remember from the newsletter that I think the achievement gap is when they measure in fourth grade reading or math, and I'm going to forget now because I didn't review it right before this. Let's say it was reading, fourth graders with an individual education program, special ed, are 44% or 44 points lower in achievement than children without special ed designation.
Yeah, aren't they going to be? I don't understand why that would be a big concern.
But what we're doing is we're comparing it to other states that are much less of an achievement gap. The goal is to get that achievement gap as low as possible, because I would agree you're going to have a gap, But if other states are half of Iowa's, we need to ask why.
Some of that is because once a kid reaches their goal, they drop their IEP.
Yeah,
And Iowa doesn't have those kids on IEPs anymore, once they've reached their goal. You know, our son was behind in speech and reading, and has now caught back up to his class.
Yes.
So he will eventually come off of, didn't get an IEP.
Yes, but, and I accept that is the case, but you still have the folks who are, every year, you're going to have children who are either just brand new special ed designation, or halfway through their special ed experience, or almost done, that are still gonna have an IEP. I mean, you're gonna have folks at all levels, either, you know, I just mentioned them, so there shouldn't be that large of a gap.
okay, let's talk about traditional students. Iowa used to be really top of the nation for education. So traditional students, where are we compared to other states? You know,
My understanding, middle of the pack.
exactly, so that's,
We went backwards.
yeah, we went backwards, so, you know, why, you know, put so much emphasis on a child who's not gonna be up there and put it on both of the groups?
Well, it's an effort to try to improve services and outcomes.
So maybe piggyback and then be able to move on to other topics. So maybe rather than being so fast and rash with jumping into changing this, maybe it sounds like there's needs to be a little bit more information gathered and do maybe a study or figure out where are the loopholes, what can be restructured within the education system in Iowa versus going ahead and attacking the AAs. Maybe slowing the bill down and figuring out, maybe this is something that needs to be tabled, and we need to figure out what is it that needs to be restructured, and then bring out a new bill once we have all the information, variables, pieces of the puzzle, versus letting people go and school districts having to frantically figure out a plan by the start of August of something. And with April 30th being the deadline of, that's when
Yeah.
districts are already on the hunt to replace their teachers. So that's my go-to.
And I'm okay with that myself. Like I said, it wasn't my idea and I didn't know anything was gonna happen, so I'm okay with doing that. The timeline issue, I do believe, has been taken care of, because if a school decides to do nothing different, all they gotta do, they can do the same thing going forward year after year. I mean, so the timeline, that part I'm satisfied with. I mean, if you just choose to do what you were doing last year, the timelines really don't matter. And I would expect there'd be a majority of schools, even if they're interested in looking at change, would probably the first year allow other schools to go first. And I would guess most schools would say, hey, status quo, let's see how this works out.
Well, what about all the other programs that the AAs do provide, like the crisis program, the ability to help out the mental health piece? There's always the partnership within what the mental health piece. Why not figure out what are those loopholes? And if there are loopholes, you know, those mental health pieces can have an effect on those kids with special needs. Maybe there's a loophole, maybe there's something else that's going on than just thinking that the special education numbers are low. You just need to slow it down.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Our college professor, we would have 70% of our students would qualify as having PTSD in their mental health already. This was college freshmen. And with COVID, that number actually increased. We are not teaching students, we do not have the resources, and we're not committing the resources for mental health, for crisis management, for normal students, much less the students who need it. And it's been there's a reason why Iowa dropped, and it's not because we don't have the more dedicated teachers. We've always had dedicated teachers. We've had great school systems. We've lost the support because the education system was taught to be an enemy against fiscal responsibility. And we got there by committing to teaching. And I have lived in other states and seen bathrooms in schools that don't have doors on them, and that we have a dedicated population, and you are not showing its libraries, its schools, the dedication to building our future. We've slipped because of that. And the money, just taxes is not the answer, it's the dedication to use that money wisely. And know that our students that are going to college now have gone through stuff none of us ever did. And they have to worry about something like Perry happening and that. We didn't have that. And those resources have to be a commitment for students to be able to think, to be able to handle the stress, and to be able to move on. And we need that desperately as a commitment from our legislation.
Okay.
And speaking of that, segue into that, the latest news that I read your newsletter was about allowing teachers to have guns. One of those things I'm asking, have you done a survey of any teachers that want guns? Because everybody I talk to, the teachers don't want guns. They want to keep their kids safe. They're worried about getting their kids safe. They're worried about this. I know you have criteria about who's going to have guns and everything, but guns and teachers, I don't know. Have you done a survey? Has anybody done some surveys to the teachers before introducing these bills about let's have teachers have guns?
We've got 2 school districts who tried to move forward on this. They were stopped by liability insurance who said that we weren't going to cover it. So the entire effort is to address the liability insurance issue and then let the local school boards decide. So there's no mandate, no requirement, no anything.
Okay, then why is it in your newsletter, if all these things are kind of like, maybe before you put your newsletter out, you should wait until things happen because you put it in there and everything you put in there, you said, oh no, it's not, you know, they didn't pass this, they didn't pass that. I know it's good to introduce it, but then, you know, when it isn't really passed or it's liability issues or things like that, and it's out there in the public, yeah, people, yeah, I don't quite understand that timeline for you.
Okay. I don't know what to say. I'll accept that.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Sandy?
Can I just say thank you for what you did for trying to protect women's sports in Iowa and our youth from that. Thank you very much. And I know the border is more of a federal issue, but is there anything statewide we can do to protect Iowans from that onslaught?
We actually, out of state government, just passed, I forget the bill number, but a bill to make it a state crime to be in the country illegally and in Iowa. Currently, law enforcement officers come across illegal aliens all the time, and there's no state crime to charge them with, to hold them. And the federal government, when they call Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, they say, well, we're not showing up, let them go. And we actually had a situation where a van, and it was the ugly stereotype of the darkened windows, and they pulled the van over. There were 7 men and 2 little girls in it. Law enforcement was required to allow the 7 men to go away because we didn't have a state law on it, but because they required the adults to prove that these 2 little girls were under their guardianship and none of them could do that, the state patrol took the 2 little girls, not into custody, but into the foster system to protect them, but they had to allow the 7 men to go away. And I think you'll see, I mean, speaking of newsletters, I think you're going to see, I think the topic that's being sent out this week, yesterday maybe, was actually about the invasion at the southern border, its implications in Iowa, the fentanyl problems, and the fact that Governor Reynolds is sending National Guard and State Patrol personnel down to help with the border, to help Texas. So.
If that passes, you better get money for the jails.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Senator, Senate File 171 regarding changing the way judges are chosen? You
That
familiar
would
with
be,
that one?
well, I know about the effort. Senate File 171, being 3 digits, that would be last year's bill that apparently got re-referred back to, is it Julianne Garrett's?
Yes.
I don't know the details, if there's been anything, I don't have a lot of details.
Okay.
We have moved one, Julian's bill on subcommittee, I wasn't on it, I don't believe I was on that one. And I don't know that we moved it out of judiciary, it might be dead now.
Well, the bill itself basically takes the chief judge of the district off of the nominating commission. Does that strike you as a wise choice?
It does, we actually had problems with favoritism and a little bit of, and Steve actually dealt with it in the House, he's a judiciary chair. There was actually a problem, chief judges, there has been some wrongdoing, and
Says who?
well, in that case, a prosecutor.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you guys were gonna be certifying plumbers, it seems to me that having plumbers on that board that certifies plumbers would be a good idea. And when you take judges off of that, well,
The undertone of that effort has been to remove, so Iowa has to live with our court system. And previously, we've already made some pretty solid changes and we've seen some pretty good results. But we're trying to get generally the Bar Association influence or over-influence out of the system so we don't end up with a good old boys club where bar members are just deciding among their own community. Because not all of it is done in good faith. Ma'am.
I hope you can hear me, because you have a hard time hearing me, because you look at the, you understand other people, but you have a hard time understanding me.
I have a little bit of trouble, but I understood that.
Okay, good. I want me to everybody understand me. Well, my question talk about justice. And this is a different topic. Well, I always wonder, like every election year, they have people have an election thing, people have idea, they ask the question, what do you believe, what do you vote for, all the stuff. But it's very hard to get information about the justice, well, we have a right to know, because I don't want to vote the justice in the wrong place. Like Stephen Hump would talk about another day in email, because you have to deal with the justice, a heartbeat bill, because the justice, hey, I don't want to vote them in. I want them to respect life. That's the kind of thing we have a right to know justice background before we vote them in.
Yes, and we've had trouble with that. We cannot require judges to fill out surveys or political documents. We can't require them to.
Why?
Because they say, and they have a pretty solid argument, that if they take a position on an issue, it could prejudice them in a case that comes before them in court.
That's frustrating, because we want the judge to be, how you say, Constitution. Yeah, follow the Constitution, not their opinion.
And that is why we did some judicial nominating reform to try to get constitutional constructionists and not activists.
Yes.
Yes.
So what's the plan for that?
Well, we've done most of it already.
Okay.
I mean, we've done most of it over the last 6 years. Julian Garrett is a lawyer from Warren County, and he's in the Senate. He would like to go a little bit further. I don't know that there's enough interest all the way across the legislature to do much more.
Okay.
So they're gonna look at changes all the way to the top so that the governor doesn't have this good boy group who pushes things through and passes it based on
Hallelujah.
who she knows, because that's what's happening with the carbon pipeline. That is hazardous to all of us.
You know the Supreme Court?
No,
I'm talking our governor
IUB,
of
that's what
Iowa.
I wanted to make sure that we
I mean,
changed.
there's influence.
There's
There's
influence,
there.
Yeah. But
Yes,
you're
and
trying
it's-
to take it out of the court system.
and it's the good old boys network. It's the same 3 people that are under that influence that are preventing any bills from moving forward.
Yes.
And that's not right, that one person should have that much influence when they need to listen to the people who elect them to office, because they're elected by the people, for the people, not for the governor and the cronies that do it.
I want to make sure, it looked like you were about to
okay,
start.
no,
I want to make sure you
I
have
am
the chance
agreeing
to.
with her because this is a big item we know. And we talk about eminent domain, people think, oh, I don't have any ground, the pipeline is going through, it doesn't bother me. We asked you last time, Senator, and thank you again for coming, about water. And you said you would look into the amount of water that the pipeline is
You know what?
predicting. Probably, I know
didn't
you're
get that
busy.
done.
I start looking at schedules of these legislators and I know you're really busy, but the story is that it will take millions of gallons of water at each ethanol plant, and Iowa doesn't have millions of gallons of water. So,
We do have a gentleman that I'm glad to see his influence. His first name's Doyle, and actually on my phone I've got his last name. From Mobile, but he's a businessman who's trying to sell the idea of getting plants at every ethanol plant, getting an end user of that carbon, so you don't need to transport it at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
There's other options.
I've told him, give me anything you can, I'll help.
I guess I'll mention this to everybody. I was at a ethanol plant yesterday where they did the what do you call it, stockbrokers meeting. Okay, so I have some stock, so big deal. Anyway, they came up with the idea. I asked them if they were going to sign up with an ethanol plant or not, and if so or not, give us the whys. I thought this would be good for the stock people to hear. And so he said, yes, we are signing up, but they are signing up and they are going west. They're going to use a pipeline that has been repurposed. It had been a natural gas line. So they only have 5 miles of new people to find. And last year, a couple years ago when this first started, I had called the CEO down there. I mean, I didn't know him, but he was very, very nice. And he said, I don't want to get involved in a business with easements. So yesterday I said, you remember that? And he said, yes, I remember the conversation. But he said, we are going to do easements first, and then we will pick the route, rather than what we're seeing in Iowa is pick the route and then try to force people to do the easements. So I thought that was very interesting, and then I mentioned all of the water that Iowa is saying they're going to need. And then a young man came over later, they were just so nice, and he said, we are not going to be using water on this pipeline. He said, we're going to be using air to cool.
Really?
And I said, wow, so it almost makes this pipeline in Iowa obsolete already.
Does.
You know, we're not
Sounds like
even,
it.
yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna be obsolete if it ever goes through. Yeah, so I thought, well, maybe I'll just mention that to everybody. Yeah.
And I don't think people understand, if property is taken by eminent domain from private corporation, all of our land in Iowa is at risk for the
Is at
next
risk.
big project that wants to come through and steal it. And that's why I don't understand why the Senate doesn't take a stand to help us, because they're not.
They're not. I'm trying. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to take up time.
Okay, well, we reached our hour. Appreciate everybody coming. The next legislative coffee will be the 3rd Saturday in March, and that one will be held in Elkhorn. We'll be at the Kringelman Pastries facility down there. So hope to see you all there. Again, thank you, Jason, for taking the time to come by and share with everybody. And again, Jason, Steve, Brian, they're all very accessible. You can find their contact information very easy, and you can email, you can text, they're very responsive to what's going on. So again, thank you everybody for coming, and that'll wrap her up.
Thank you, folks. Nice to see you.